They've been called Florida's disposable workers, undocumented immigrants working in high-risk jobs, providing much-needed manual labor for modest pay. While companies profit from them, Florida laws do not protect them. The Daily News' Maria Perez spent more than a year looking at practices that can lead to arrests, jail time, and deportation of injured workers. Our investigation took an in-depth look at the labor pool of unauthorized workers, an estimated 600,000 in Florida, many filling the ranks of dangerous jobs. 1 in 5 construction worker and 1 in 3 farm workers undocumented. Maria Perez's reporting found businesses often employ leasing companies accept phony work IDs to hire workers and then report the fraud if someone gets hurt on the job. Since 2004, 163 injured immigrant workers were charged with a felony for providing false documents. In most cases, it came after their employer or insurer reported them. The same laws used against immigrants can be applied to companies knowingly accepting phony IDs, giving them little reason to verify upon hiring. Unless a worker is hurt, then employers are incentivized to check and report the fraud to avoid paying medical expenses. With a felony charge, undocumented workers face arrest, jail time, and deportation. Maria Perez is in studio with us. Thank you for bringing us that story. How did that really get on your radar screen to begin with?
The first idea came when there was a raid here in Collier County. State investigators and deputies came to a packing house, Oaks Farms packing house in 2014, and they arrested 100 workers. And they charged them with workers' compensation fraud, but really none of them had, or in the charging documents, none of them were accused of applying for workers' compensation. So that's when I started to look into this law and how it was applied.
And it's a little complicated, as your story demonstrates, because a lot of times the companies that have employed the workers are not the ones that are really involved in this systematic exploitation. It's a staffing company.
Yeah, what usually happens is that small companies hire bigger companies that kind of put on their payroll the workers of the smaller companies. They don't check the documents of the workers, but then when they get injured on the job, they or their insurance carriers report the workers. One of the biggest staff leasing agency that we have found have reported more of these workers owns its own insurance. So it's them basically who don't check the documents at the point of hire, but then after a worker gets injured, they check the documents and they report the worker for using these false documents.
And what jumps out at me, and I think what's so powerful, is the fact that these workers are employed in very necessary high-risk fields, construction and things like that, and then they're treated as disposable when they get hurt.
Right. These high-risk industries rely to a great extent in undocumented workers. Documented workers are like 30%, about a third of the roofers nationwide, about that proportion of drywall installers, construction painters. So there is a big incentive for a company that has a high deductible, or even for an insurance carrier, to deny claims or to refuse to pay claims for injuries that may be very serious.
What I found was interesting also is the enforcement agencies that you contacted, you found very few employers that were charged with anything. It really all fell on the burden, even though the employers had very easy access to finding out whether these documents were real or not.
Yeah, employers, if they wanted, especially those in sectors where undocumented workers are a big proportion of the workforce, they could use E-Verify, or they could use background checks to make sure that the Social Security number that they are saying is theirs, but they choose not to do that. And then they hire them anyway, and then they just they or their insurance insurance carriers, they report them.
Now, what did they say? I don't know if you brought any of your findings to these state agencies, but did they have any kind of excuse or any rationale for not ever going after the staffing companies?
Well, not really. The crime of that is a crime for the employers is to knowingly hire someone who is using false documents. So many times, like a company, the companies are not required to check. It's not.
They'd rather stay in the dark, probably.
And is legal. It's perfectly legal if they don't check the documents with E-Verify or background checks. Florida doesn't require that, so they can just say we didn't know that this worker was worker didn't, the social security number didn't belong to them. We took their word that it belonged to them. So, but what the state enforcement said is that they look into the companies, but they haven't been able to make a case, and that they sometimes have referred when they haven't been able. Well, they made a case. I found at least one employer was charged.
He admitted it, didn't he? In one of the interviews, he admitted?
He in a sworn statement, he told law enforcement that, he knew his workers were here illegally and they were using false documents. And that's the only employer that we have found have been charged with this crime by state investigators, while more than 163 injured workers and more than 600 other undocumented workers have been charged with this. But what state investigators said is that they have looked into that if they haven't been able to make more cases, it's not for lack of trying.
So it's really, the system is set up to go after the workers as opposed to after the people who are hiring them, as just as the way it's kind of laid out?
Obviously, if I could say something like, I think it's easier to prove the elements of the crime that is used to punish workers than the one that is used to punish the employers. Also, the crime that is used to punish the workers is a felony, while the one that is used to punish the employers is a misdemeanor.
Interesting. And it's worth noting, at the very heart of this, it's about people getting exploited and hurt. So what are the kinds of injuries that people have suffered on the job that have resulted in them not only being injured and incapacitated, but potentially deported?
A little bit of everything. And there was a worker who had 4 fingers in his right hand amputated while he was trying to repair some machinery that he was using, a lawnmower. There were workers who fell from roofs, who had broken ribs, who have broken legs. There was a worker who even died. He had HIV, but the family and the attorney of the family said that the incident, it was a bulldozer. He was driving a bulldozer and he flipped. And then he had to go to surgery, and then he developed infections, and the family said that that speeded up his death. There is sprains. Another woman also had a finger amputated.
So a lot of different things that can happen on these jobs. And I guess as another part of your story, and people will be able to see this online as well, we're going to kick over to Dorothy's video that she shot with you, profiling one of these workers who, if correct me, is facing deportation now as a result of this?
Yes, he was arrested when he was on probation. The immigration authorities came to arrest him, and he is now on deportation procedures, and he is facing almost certain deportation. He has appealed a denial for asylum, but he doesn't really have a lot of hope that he will be able to stay.
Well, great reporting, and let's hear what he has to say.
Pues más que nada, cuando yo salí de mi casa, salí por ayudar a mis papás, porque había momentos que no había comida en la mesa. Esa fue una de las intenciones de venirnos para acá. Miedo, no temor, porque si me deportan, si eso hubiera sido hace 4 años atrás, no hubiera tanto problema. Hoy tengo una mujer y tengo una bebé. Y tengo 37 años y es el primer hijo que yo tengo. Yo soy el mayor en mi casa y soy el último en tener que tengo hijos, y entonces eso duele tan solo de pensar eso, que si yo me voy, si yo intento regresar para acá de nuevo, a mí por las deportaciones a mí me dan prisión. Entonces automáticamente, si yo pierdo el caso, pierdo a mi bebé, pierdo a mi mujer. Entonces eso es lo más triste que hay. No poder hacer nada. Ahora no sé qué vaya a pasar después de eso.